Hey guys, welcome back to the Nerdy Gritty, where we delve deep into the details of pop culture. I am Dez.
And I'm Fox.
And we have a very exciting episode today.
We've been looking forward to it for a while.
We really have been.
Before we get into that, of course, what you been up to there, Dez?
Actually not much. Haven't played Sundered in a long time.
That's true.
Just Telltale Batman. I haven't really been doing much at all recently because I got a brand new computer. I got this, beast machine, and I was really happy. So the way it worked out was, I've been waiting for Black Friday, but just before Black Friday, some dude posted on Craigslist this, incredible computer. I'm not going to read the specs or anything like that, but for a great price. And I'm like, wow, that's too good of a price. What's going on here? And it turns out that he, got this top-notch machine so he could play PUBG and The Witcher 3 and a bunch of games that are recent to brand new, flawlessly without issue. And he's like, I played them for 6 months, but all I really want to do is play Counter-Strike. So I'm just going back to my old machine. It runs it fine, yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah,
what about you, Fox? What have you been up to?
I have been playing a couple things. Let's see. Still on the final world of Odyssey, because it's hard. Yeah. And I haven't been able to beat it yet, and I hate life. Because we make our videos private videos so until they release on a certain day. Right. But I have watched all of Fox's uploaded videos of Odyssey. I've still got more I haven't uploaded.
And I'm been waiting for you to upload more, you monster.
I've been mad at Odyssey, so. But let's see. Oh, what were the other games? What did I play? Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
How is that?
Came out Friday. It is, as far as the mechanics go, it is a fun game. It's a good JRPG. Got all the things you would expect in a JRPG. But it is clearly an anime. It's an anime video game, basically. Oh, yeah. It's not based on an anime, but the characters are all anime characters, essentially, and they talk stupid. Just like I did right there. They speak poorly. The voice acting is fine. Voice acting's fine. It's just it's the writing is what it is.
So we're talking about quality actors that come in, but because of poor writing and execution, it doesn't go well. It's almost like what we're going to be talking about today.
It's also funny because so there's a main cast, and one of the main cast, they all have Scottish, British, England, Great Britain, whatever accent, United Kingdom accents. That's what I'm looking for. Somewhere in there. Except for one of the main characters who just sounds like an American girl. Mm-hmm. Who just, kind of just sounds like a teenage. It does not really match the character to me. It's not that it doesn't match the character. It doesn't match the other characters because she speaks a lot more plainly. She's like, we need to go over there. Where everybody else would be like, onward, let's go do the thing.
Let us travel onward, love, and to the sky.
That's actually...
Hey, can we just go?
That was pretty good. That was similar to what the main character... But with that, it's a fun game. I don't hate it. I'm gonna play it sparingly so I don't get too annoyed.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I'm gonna have one... Ukulele.
Oh, yeah.
I got that for the PlayStation. I got lots of games on Black Friday.
Yeah.
I have two more than it. Ukulele is fun. If you don't know what ukulele is, I'm not surprised. It was kind of a lesser release, but it's basically
Banjo-Kazooie.
The classic 3D platformer on the N64, made by Rare, who made lots of good games. They were kings of the N64. A bunch of those guys made this game. Ah. So it's basically a new Banjo-Kazooie, except without the charm. It's basically as if they were there were platforms and
that's what Banjo-Kazooie was, though.
There were platforms and you collected things, right? Yep, that's all it was.
There we go.
It's the controls are 98% really good, but that last 2% is frustrating. Sometimes it just feels okay, why did that happen? And immediately turn off the speech because it's just when somebody talks, they're just saying literally that's what it is, and it's the most frustrating thing. Turn that off immediately, but it's also pretty fun if you like those old 3D platformer games. That's cool. And then Assassin's Creed Origins, surprisingly good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I've been seeing that more and more.
Yeah, it's not amazing, but they did
better than Michael Fassbender.
I've seen the first 45 minutes of that movie, and I want to watch the rest, but I wasn't impressed. But it's vast improvement on the where it was going, where the series was going. Still has some old hallmarks, and thankfully, it doesn't do a whole lot of modern day storyline stuff. A little bit, but mostly it's just you're a guy in Egypt and you're fighting bad guys. And it's okay.
And that's kind of what people want.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
yeah.
They want the combat system in a different historically
a little bit.
accurate
This
area,
combat system is better because it's actually like difficult.
Oh.
It's not just like the Batman press the button at the right time. It's like no, you need to if it's like you were talking about in Hellblade where if there's 2 or 3 guys, oh no. For this that's kind of the same. I got better at it and it's definitely not like Dark Souls level of oh no, but it's still like you have to watch out and it's fun. Yeah.
By the way, before we really get into our topic, I do want to give an apology to you guys. There may be a lot. First of all, there's going to be a bit of an echo. It was the same thing in our last episode.
Yep.
And there may be a lot of noise, background noise. We apologize for that as well. So, long story short, we had built ourselves a little makeshift like sound absorbing recording studio. Basically. In our office area, we work at a church and they give us like full reign to be able to do what we want here. It was really nice, kind of them. But they're actually building a video room now and a soundproof room will be a part of that. But they had to take over our area for what they're building and what they're taking, what they're using and everything like that. So our next few episodes are going to be in my office.
Yeah,
so
interim.
There'll be a little bit of an echo, which isn't bad. But they're also building a desk in the office next door.
Yep.
And so you might hear a lot of background noise. We apologize for that.
Yeah, and you'll hear a lot of noise from both of us about what we're talking about today.
Ah, yeah. So, in honor of the new Star Wars Episode 8 coming out
this week,
we are revisiting a debate that Fox and I have had
I'm so excited.
Too often. The truth of the matter is there's probably nothing new to say, but we just like repeating ourselves in different ways
100%.
Every single time, over and over. And we neither of us will ever relent, of course.
Well, yeah.
It's because I'm right. So here's the truth.
You fool.
I was raised on Star Wars. I love it. It's wonderful. It's brilliant.
In a similar fashion, they had come out before you were born, Star Wars.
Yeah, well, episode 6 came out the year I was born.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I was a preteen or a little younger, I basically grew up watching Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. The Peter Jackson series of movies. So,
then...
Since both of those...
Prequels have come out.
3 for each.
3 for each.
3 prequels for each series.
And we have each watched the prequels and understand that they're not great films.
Disclaimer, Des says prequels the wrong way. He says prequels, like before Peter Quill. From
Prequels.
It's prequel.
Prequels. Before they were quelled.
Prequel.
Antoine Monetaire.
Go watch
reference our Dice Masters.
Go watch Dice Masters.
So anyway, was this when you were an intern? No, it couldn't have been because the Hobbit movies weren't coming out.
The first
when you
Hobbit
first moved back
movie
here.
was in Joplin. I think I saw all 3 of them in Joplin.
So when Fox moved back to Oregon, we got on the conversation of not which prequel series is better, because we both understand that neither of them are great. More which prequel series is worse.
A little bit.
Yeah. And we each know that they're not great.
Yeah, neither one is amazing.
But because we're fanboys, we each want to defend our own prequel series.
And neither holds up to the greatness of the originals.
Oh, absolutely
By
not.
far.
Not
They
even
fail
close.
miserably, all 6.
So I pulled this up. What I do want to point out is that the general Metacritic score for these movies, so like this is a Metacritic score, if you didn't know this, it's all the official critics, the guys who have a job as critics, IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes will take all of them and then make an average of them.
Yeah.
And that creates a Metacritic score. They're pretty even.
By the way, yeah, that's what Rotten Tomatoes does, guys. They don't have a bias. They just report other people's scores. Okay?
Right.
Let's move on. They're pretty much on the same level. The Hobbit movies are all above the Star Wars prequels, but not by any significant... Yeah.
Out of 100, each of them are about 2 or 3 points.
Right.
And
out
of 100.
They're pretty... Like, I'm shocked that the Star Wars prequels are as high as they are.
I'm also shocked that the Hobbit... I'm shocked that all of them are as high as they are.
I understand the Hobbit ones. To me, they're middling movies. I understand that.
That's okay. Let's not get into this.
Gotta hold it back, because I will yell.
Yeah, and this is the final thing. Okay, so I love a good debate, and I love going back and forth. Fox gets genuinely angry sometimes.
I'll be able to, I've been thinking about it a long time. I know.
He's ready for this?
I have a few points I want to make.
Well, I'll let you go first. I have a trump card that I'm going to hold on to.
You have a trump card?
That I feel like...
Wow, you're going to be winning so much, you're going to be tired of it, aren't you?
Oh, man. It's going to be huge.
It's going to be huge.
Go ahead, Fox. I'll let you start, though.
Okay. I am a fan of quality writing in things, as is everybody. Everybody, right, whether or not they know it, writing. They prefer movies need to be written, and by quality I mean written in a way that you understand what is happening, what the goal of the characters are, like where the end point is, and
already wanting
dialogue to makes sense. It might not come out the greatest, but it makes sense and you know what they're saying. And my first point is that by far, The Hobbit is written way better. Because throughout all three, despite the fact that other things we'll get into, they are bloated, there is far too much in each movie.
Right.
Despite the fact that there are storylines that don't even need to be there for any reason, you know what the goal of every character is. Bilbo, he wants to help the dwarves. He says it very well in the first movie. At the end of the first movie, he says, I have a home. I have a place to go back to where people know who I am and where I can feel like I'm at home. Mm-hmm. And you guys don't have that. And so that's why he's helping them. Because if he can help them get that, then that's a good thing to do. The dwarves, you understand what their goal is. Take back Erebor. Defeat Smaug and take back Erebor. Bard, he wants to help his family, first of all.
Right.
That's his very first thing, because now this dragon is flying in. But also, he wants to help his people, both from that dragon and also from the Master of Lake Town. You understand, like, the elves, you understand what they don't really have a plot. They are kind of involved in it, and then at the end, all of them are trying to get the Arkenstone, trying to get the riches that are in Erebor. Like, you understand from the very beginning why things are happening and why the characters are doing what they're doing. In Star Wars, in the prequels, that's not true.
I think it's equally true.
I have seen those movies more than I want to. More than I have ever wanted to.
Twice?
Yeah, once. I don't know what Qui-Gon Jinn's goal was, ever. Because he was never trying to find a young apprentice. He already had that. He was never trying to, what was his goal? Trade negotiations. Why were those things? What was Obi-Wan Kenobi's goal throughout the thing? To fight the Sith. Okay, great, wonderful. These are very general things that it's just because Star Wars...
Because General Kenobi.
Sure. Anakin's goal? Never really clear on what that was. They have things that they do because of things that happen to them, but to me, I don't know what the plot was.
I think you
intended to be.
I think you hit a different flaw in the prequel movies, and I'll agree this is a flaw, in which the first one and therefore the intrigue of the prequel Star Wars movies are political. It is a political themed movie, and that's really hard to grasp when the movie is made for children. Like, its target demographic are 9 and 10-year-olds, but then from the very beginning, they're like, oh, trade negotiations. Like, a 9 and 10-year-old don't know what a trade negotiation is.
Well, they see lightsabers every 5 seconds. But.
Right. Yeah. They just want to see, and they get that. They have plenty of lightsabers and robots and robots fighting lightsabers.
Far too much.
Yeah. Way too much. They steal the magic from the Force. They steal the magic from the Jedi.
Literally.
Yes.
It's no longer magic. It's how many midichlorians you have.
I just want in episode 8, Luke, like, Rey to be talking to Luke and Luke to be like, the Force is beyond something we understand. There's even a time that we thought we could measure it. It's only after that we found out how wrong we were. And basically, never to say it, never to do it, but there's that minor reference that midichlorians are wrong and that's stupid.
That would be fun.
That would be great.
Yeah. Well, they should be saying that while they're at Jar Jar Binks' funeral.
Standing on his grave.
If he's still in the Senate, then he got blown up in episode 7.
Yes. So, anyway, but I think the motivations are clear. Like, I can walk you through the motivations. Originally, Qui-Gon Jinn is there to help mediate the trade negotiations. And so therefore, as the mediator, he is trying to escort Amidala and be with her and walk with her in the negotiations with the Trade Federation. But by chance, they end up on Tatooine. Or, yeah, it was Tatooine, right?
That's where...
On Tatooine.
Yes, that's where Anakin is from.
Then, by chance, they run into Anakin, and at that point, he sees this child with so much Force potential, he wants to take in... Also, he has, like, a fatherly role, that he wants to take this child. Now, because of poor writing, you don't really get the fullness of that.
And that's what it is. That's the problem.
But, I feel that the same thing happens in... there's so much that you're meant to just... assume in the Hobbit movies.
For example?
Like, why do the dwarves want to fight a dragon to get that old kingdom back? Why not just live where they've lived this entire time?
Well, I mean, they're refugees.
They had a house, though. They had
shows
a place
you
that they
at
lived.
The beginning. Okay, sure, but let's use a real life example. Do you not think Syrian refugees in America right now are just like, well, this is good enough. We don't have to go home, or do they want to go back to where they've lived their whole lives?
If there was a giant dragon sitting on top of it,
There kind of is.
That's true.
It's called war.
Yeah, but I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but these dwarves, what's the lead dwarf name?
Thorin Oakenshield.
Never lived there, right?
Yes, they did.
Did they?
There's a whole, like, it's far too long, like everything else in the movie, but there is a, like, the introduction, there's the whole, like, what is it? It goes modern day Bilbo, where it's like Bilbo and Frodo right before
right.
Fellowship, but Bilbo tells Frodo in a story there was this kingdom called Erebor, and it shows Thorin and his father, next up dwarf, whatever his name was, living there, and then Smaug attacks. And they have
I thought
they
it was
have to
generations
flee.
that they...
Nope, he literally lived there. All of them did.
Okay, that's a fair point. But, so they go and they get it back. For me, what really begins to confuse me is why they become so strict and so, like, selfish. Why does Thorin, like, there is no, it's not the Arkenstone. It's not a Palantir.
It's not magical in any way.
It's not why does he
it's
suddenly...
just a nice looking
I want it. It's mine.
Right.
And nobody can touch it.
I agree.
To the point that no armies can come in. Nothing is allowed. Like, nobody is allowed this. And then if people are like, well, we helped you. Can we get some, like, return for that? Or why is Douchey McElfface? What's the king's name?
Oh, King Thranduil.
Thranduil, thank you. Why is he Douchey McElfface?
Because he's an elf.
But elves don't, like, he is to, like, a huge extent of arrogance and weirdness. Like,
Sure.
I feel like he reminds me of that weird dude that sings like the "Ooh, ah, ah, la, 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 la." Like,
What the crap? What are you talking about right now?
there's a meme of a guy that's just how he sings.
Nope.
You listeners know what I'm talking about. Fox, I'll show you this later.
Not up to date.
Anyway, he's just a weird guy. Like, there are so many characters that play such a massive role. Like, it turns the tide of what they have to do because of Thranduil. It turns the tide. The fifth movie exists because of Thorin, and there is no reason behind their motivation. There would be no Battle of the Five Armies if Thorin was just like, oh, hey guys, yeah, come on in. I have this massive kingdom now, and I would love to host you in my massive kingdom. And then they all go inside and they shake hands, and then the goblins are like, "Urgh," and then all of a sudden there's like 6 armies inside of a massive fortress, and the goblins trying to attack, and they ruin them.
Okay. He was against the elves because when they were in need, when Smaug was attacking, remember at the beginning when Thranduil and his army show up and he's on like the big moose thing?
Right.
They say, nope, and they leave. They do not help the dwarves. And
Right.
so now when the elves show up, they're like, Thorin is like, no, why should I help you? You let my people die.
But why did the elves do that in the first place?
Because they didn't want to fight a dragon. You were just saying, why fight a dragon? Well, they made your choice.
When it's an
of
army,
not
it's
fighting
one
a
thing.
dragon.
When it's 12 guys, or however many dwarves there were.
Like, here's the difference in what we're saying. You're talking about how you don't like the personalities of characters.
I'm saying that their personalities make no sense.
What? Okay, so Thorin is protective of his home world and mistrustful of people who betrayed him in the past. Makes sense. Thranduil is a haughty king. Both, he's like prideful and pretty good looking. But, that's just a pun there on the word haughty. Yeah. Anyway, that's what I was going for.
Uh-huh.
And is all, like, he wants what he feels like he's owed.
Then why doesn't he help
then they
Bard and the people of Lake Town? When he
Because it's the dragon.
But there's immediate not go to help
Smaug is
them
back.
when they come to not Erebor. Yeah, Erebor.
Erebor's the kingdom under the mountain.
When they come to Erebor, the refugees of Lake Town, and it's exactly the situation that Thorin was in, why didn't he throw open the gates? They basically, not purposefully, but inadvertently sicked Smaug on Lake Town.
Right.
And then the refugees of Lake Town come out, and they go to Erebor under Bard's leadership, and they're like...
They don't go to Erebor, they go to the Dale, which is the city of men outside of Erebor. That's where they take refuge. But yes, they do come... I understand they do come to the
bottom line is like,
dwarves
hey, we would like help.
because Thorin was betrayed in the past. By people. Nobody came to his aid when his people were being destroyed. Why should he help them? I completely understand that it's a little... the whole, like, gold madness that he gets, where he literally is, like, hearing voices and, like,
Yes.
go and he, like, builds, like a barrier outside, like, in between him and, like, that was stupid. It was so on the nose, and, like, it could have been much more subtle, where he just doesn't trust anybody, and, like, whatever, but it was how it was portrayed and executed. I 100% agree. Could have been way better, but I do understand the motivation there, because in the past he was betrayed or left hanging by these people, and so when they come to him, he does the same.
And so my point is, it's equal. You came with the same thing, and I said, well, I mean, I can explain it to you right now. I can explain Qui-Gon's and Obi-Wan's and Amidala's and Anakin's motivation in all of this. It's weakly portrayed, and it's not done well.
Anakin's motivation?
So Anakin's motivation in where? The whole thing is just because...
First, let's start with Phantom Menace. What's his goal?
He doesn't want to be a slave anymore. He wants to do what he can to get himself and his mother out of slavery.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That whole, like, pod race was completely unnecessary to the whole thing. And Qui-Gon Jinn goes against his own moral code by he says
the die.
He changes the die, but then he says, "No, our moral code doesn't allow us to do the thing. Like, we can't help the mom. Why not,
right.
Obi-Wan? You just cheated to help the kid. What's like all their characters, they say one thing and go back on their word. Obi-Wan literally has nothing to do. He fights the stupid red and black Darth Maul, but he basically literally sits around for the rest of the movie.
Right, he's on the ship the whole time. he's in exposition, like he's the Robin of it. The reason that Robin was originally created so Batman could have somebody to explain all his plans to. Like he was there so Batman could turn and be like, "Here's what I'm going to do." That was Obi-Wan. So Qui-Gon could turn around and be like, "Here's what I'm going to do, audience. I mean Obi-Wan Kenobi." You know, and it's a plot device. It's a really weak plot device, though, and it was poorly done. But that what was going on, you know. And there's so much fan service in Phantom Menace, like you know, Anakin Skywalker meet Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you know things like that. And yeah, I get that that's frustrating and that's bad, but there is a purpose and a reasoning behind it all. Exactly like in The Hobbit, there is. If you look back, it's there. It's weak and it's not great, but it exists.
It's much easier to understand where people are going and why they're doing what they're doing, though, in the Hobbit movies. Are you saying it doesn't make any sense for Thorin to be mistrustful of the people who betrayed him in the past, which is something that's very obviously portrayed?
I think that it makes perfect sense for him to be mistrustful of them. So he opens his gates, lets them in, has guard up, works like, you know, talks to them, be like, okay, I don't trust you, and you did this.
Well, I mean, at the same time,
overcome this
goblins are on their way.
Which is exactly
wolves are on their way.
That's exactly why he should ask for help. Like, hey, there's 12 of us, and there's an entire army of goblins on their way. Maybe an army would help? Maybe, you know, a big group of men that we just sicked a dragon on.
Or let's wall us off, and they can't get in.
They would eventually. And even still, and that's a foolish thought. Like, ooh, we'll just live in here forever and ever and never come out and nobody can ever get in. It's foolishness. It's poor reasoning.
Yes, but it's his home. The goal of the entire 3 movies is to get there and reclaim their home. And now that he's done that, he doesn't want anything to take it away. And so he walls himself off from the world. Yes, not the best logic, but I understand his motivation.
Precisely. Not the best logic, not very well communicated, but we understand his motivation. And that's pretty, I feel like the prequels are exactly the same way. It's not great. And even, like, I think that the motivations of the characters in the prequels are actually more nuanced. But they're almost too nuanced. Like, Darth Sidious's entire plan to turn the Federation and the Senate on each other to bring it to a point in which that they have to elect a supreme chancellor, like or an emperor, and like the entire thing, the whole thing was this long con to which he becomes the emperor, and it's what's called in like the nerd realm, what's called the Xanatos Gambit, and the Xanatos Gambit is no matter what happens, he wins.
Oh,
so in this situation, if the Trade Federation wins, guess who's backing that? Darth Sidious. Ha! Palpatine wins. If the Republic comes in and saves the day, guess who was the Chancellor when they saved the day? Palpatine. Palpatine wins. If it goes exactly to plan, guess who becomes Emperor of the Galaxy? Palpatine.
Sure, I understand. We should move on to another point, though.
Okay.
Because
yes.
All of these things are never going to have a conclusion answer. That's something we have to
remember. In fact, we're already half an hour in, so I'm going to come up with my trump card because
okay, fine.
There's going to be some meat on the bones. I think that my argument is they are equally poor. They are equally not great. They're equally not well done in different ways. But Star Wars from the very beginning, especially as a prequel, had whole cloth to stitch from. There was very little that they had to follow, or like nobody was. So George Lucas had free reign, and we all knew from the very beginning that George Lucas isn't great at this.
Nope, He's never been good.
The least good of the Star Wars movies, in my opinion, is New Hope, the first one. And that's one that George Lucas had the entire reign over. They only got better from there.
Right.
The more that he got his hands off, the better the movies got. He's been an idea man from the beginning. He did a great job, but
very basic ideas that other people make better.
Right. And so, whole cloth from the beginning, and he stitched it poorly. Peter Jackson had made 3 very good movies. He worked very hard to stick to the literature given to him. Did a very good job
Talking
with
about
that.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings.
Yes, very good job.
And then somebody said, here is another book, The Hobbit. He was given the answer in his hands.
Yes.
I can do this well. And he chose to make it poorly.
Well, first of all, it was not given to him originally. It was given to Guillermo del Toro, who started on the process of making things.
Right.
And then Guillermo del Toro made the unnecessary rock giant scene. And it was like, you know what? That was more fun. I'm going to go make Pacific Rim. That's kind of exactly what happened. And I'm thankful because Pacific Rim is awesome.
It's so good.
So he's coming in into a project that's already in the works. So he's not given free reign like he was on Lord of the Rings. It was a miracle that he was given free reign on Lord of the Rings because he was basically not an unknown, but if you've ever watched a Peter Jackson movie from before Lord of the Rings, you would be shocked that he made Lord of the Rings. So very different situation. He's coming into something that's already been started and has already been decided to be at least 2 movies, which is 2 movies would be a good amount. You could cut it in half and make a good two movie, and even include most of the storylines that, like, even the unnecessary, like, necromancer thing could be included in a smaller form, and 2 movies could be good. 3 is too many. So he's coming in to something that's already been decided, and there was a lot of studio input because these are guaranteed moneymakers.
Right.
Because of Lord of the Rings and because Peter Jackson's name is on it now. So let's spend less on production, so more CGI. Let's get a lady in there because these movies have always been sausage fest. So let's make up a character named what's her name? Kate from Lost.
No, it's the mom from Tariel, the mom from Undertale.
Yeah, Tariel.
Yeah, Tariel.
Yeah, we need a lady in here, of course, because can't have a bunch of dudes wandering around. That's gay, and that's actual words of New Line Cinema.
Right.
And so there are things that are being placed upon the the whole red camera thing, like the 45 frames per second red camera. That was like, studio, we want this to be a thing. Let's set it apart by making it 45 frames per second. But everybody was like, this looks stupid. And they're like, nope, we're doing it anyway. And so that's a thing. So there's lots of studio input. I think your argument works against you because George Lucas literally owns the whole thing and can do whatever he wants and decides, let's make Darth Vader far more important than he ever was. Darth Vader was an SS officer. He wasn't Space Jesus. He wasn't like the end-all be-all, but these movies are 6 hours of nonsense leading up to the rise of Darth Vader. And in the whole like mythos of Star Wars, Darth Vader was important to the emotional plot of like Luke being who he is and the like redemption between him and his father, but he wasn't like like when Darth Vader died, the Empire didn't fall. The Death Star 2 didn't blow up. Like, they still had to go do those things. Lando still had to bring the Millennium Falcon and blow up the Death Star, and Han and Leia were still having to like take down the shield on Endor. Like, these things are happening. So he decided with 100% freedom, because he literally owned it all, to make 3 terrible movies. Peter Jackson, who had decided, you can watch the special features of Lord of the Rings and say, I'm never doing this again. He comes in, and he still chose to. It's not like they're forcing him to by gunpoint. I understand. But he comes into a project because he does love the works of Tolkien.
Right.
With a lot of baggage already involved. And I'm not saying he's not at fault. There was a lot of unnecessary stuff. Because he and Philippa, and Fran, what's her face? The same writers were involved. They wrote it. I understand. He did poorly. But he had a lot of studio. Like, there was so much attached to this whole production that he couldn't get around. And therefore, lots of it was not his fault.
Okay, so let's pull the blame away from Peter Jackson individually. The creators of the Hobbit movies did a poor... The movies themselves are poor because they were given content to which to pull from, and they chose to dilute and twist it as much as possible.
Sure, yeah.
And that, because it's added as an adaptation. It is, I think each of them are equal, but the Star Wars prequels are not an adaptation. The Hobbit movies are an adaptation, and they could be listed as the worst adaptation ever.
Oh, absolutely not. No, you're far from correct.
What?
There are adaptations that are far worse.
Okay.
Go watch, like, Avatar.
See, I think...
Bad.
Well,
Last Airbender.
And like World War Z,
Yeah,
you know.
there are adaptations that are worse. You are being very unnecessarily...
I think it's still in that area because Avatar's a good argument, but like World War Z, they went out knowing like, look, no, we're not going to make something of the actual book. We're not trying to stay true to the book.
Yeah.
But they went in saying, not only are we going to remain entirely true to the book, but we're going to remain entirely true to the Silmarillion. We're going to pull in some of the unfinished tales. And this is going to be like, they advertised it from the very beginning as this like literary homage to Tolkien's other works.
It's more from the ending of Return of the King, the appendices, not really from the Silmarillion, but yeah.
But
I understand. I understand what you're saying. They're adding to it, although I understand that they're adding to it because The Hobbit itself does not make a very good story to like show on screen. So largely, they probably just shouldn't have done the whole thing in the first place, which is also true about the prequels.
Yes,
in the way that they
both
did it,
should not have been.
They shouldn't have made. Here's my closest to a trump card that I have. Would you be interested in watching a? It exists, by the way. I think it's like 2-ish hours. A cut of the Hobbit trilogy down to as close as the book only. Would you be interested in watching that movie? Where it's just footage from the prequels, where it's only the story of the Hobbit and the dwarves going to Erebor. It's not going to be perfect because you can't make it perfect because there's a lot of crap, but would you be interested in watching that?
Yes.
Are you interested in watching the Star Wars prequels again?
No,
you're not. Don't tell me you are, because you're not. You have recently told me that you want them to and are predicting that in your lifetime they will remake the prequels. And I'm down for that.
So bad.
Because I think even though they're basically pimping out Star Wars to anybody who will... Because it'll make money.
That's fine.
Freaking Kathleen Kennedy is just... that's my trump card. There is something in The Hobbit that you are interested in watching. There's a whole lot of crap around it that's like... Some of it's cool, actually. The Necromancer storyline I liked for the most part. That scene in the third one when they're fighting the ring wraiths, and I thought that was awesome. Probably the best part of the third movie.
Of course you did.
Well, it made sense. I understood what was happening throughout the thing. They've been building up this Necromancer.
You like that in the same way that I really like the battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin in Episode 3.
Okay, that one was 45 minutes of something that
And it was awesome.
No, it wasn't. Because it got boring after 5 minutes. The Necromancer battle was 5 minutes. And you're like, okay, this is over now.
To me, it's 2 wizards and 2 elves with rings. Why did they not just walk in and wave their staves of MacGuffin and say, we win? Like,
because that's not how it works.
Power is...
Because all the ring wraiths have rings as well. That were also created by Sauron. And because Sauron himself is there.
So you're telling me that Aragorn can take down 5 ring wraiths, but Gandalf, Radagast, not Celebrimbor. What's the dude with the ring's name?
What are you talking about?
The dude with the ring, Mr. Anderson, or Mr. Smith.
Oh, Elrond.
Elrond, thank you. Elrond.
Celebrimbor does have a ring, though.
And Kate Blanchett.
Elf Blanchett.
Yeah, they can't take on the ring wraiths when Aragorn took out 5 of them?
The Necromancer is also there. Sauron himself is present.
And that's the other thing. They kind of create this Sauron is here, like...
You know, in a sense. He's not actually there, but...
When at that point in the storyline, he's supposed to just be a stirring. Like, it's the beginning of the beginning of Sauron's return.
They banished the Necromancer from the woods in the... Gandalf mentions it in The Hobbit. It's literally a sentence.
Right.
But he talks about it, and so they didn't add anything that wasn't talked about. They made it a little more bombastic than it should have been.
Right.
But they didn't make anything up. That happened, and this is how they're depicting it.
And again, that's kind of my point here is they have... You said this earlier, I'll say it back to you. Your point kind of works against you, I think, because if there was a supercut of The Hobbit, the book, I would love to watch that.
Right.
Because that would be good.
Yes.
They had the chance to make something good and chose not to.
No, they did, and then added to it.
Added way too much. And
yes.
for example, if you took a soup that was good and then you poured dirty water in it, it's bad now. Just because there's bits of something good in there doesn't mean that it's not bad.
No, that's not the same thing at all. What you're saying, because that dirty water would infect the soup and everything. The soup that's good is no longer good because the Hobbit has parts to it that you are not sitting there through all 3 movies saying, this makes no sense, I hate everything.
I did.
No, you didn't.
I did.
Okay, then you're stupid.
You can ask my wife. I did.
Stupid. No, the very fact that you want to watch at least part of those movies again, but don't want to watch any of the prequels, tells me the Star Wars prequels are not as good.
Here's what I will specify. If I had never read the book and just watched...
That's true. You have to disconnect them.
Right. If I never read the book and just watched the 3 movies and somebody said, I can supercut this to something that makes sense, I would say, no, thank you. I'm okay. But because I read the book and you say, if we supercut this to match the book, I would say, that's the only reason I would say, yes, I want to see that. Because I want to see the truth of the literature that they were given. But the movies themselves, I think equally, if somebody told you I can supercut the sequels into something that makes sense, you would still say no.
You mean the Star Wars prequels?
Yeah, the Star Wars prequels. Into something that makes sense, you would still say no.
Well, you'd have to make new movies.
And that's the way I feel about the Hobbit movies. If you could tell me if I could tell you, there is a source book that you are familiar with, that you really enjoyed, and I can supercut the Star Wars prequels to try and match that as much as possible, you'd at least be interested.
Okay, that doesn't exist, though. You're speaking hypothetically.
Right, that's a hypothetical. It does not exist.
Right. The Hobbit book does exist.
That's the only reason why I would say that I would watch that supercut, is because there is a book that I had read before the movies ever came out, that I read as a kid, and I would be like, okay, sure. If you're gonna make an attempt to match that nostalgia for me, sure, let's go for it.
It's not even nostalgia. It's just the original story.
Well, for me, it's nostalgia because I read the book as a kid.
Oh, I've read them much more recently than that.
Right. So, but point being, my really major point on the movies, again, objectively, well, I guess not objectively, even metascores are subjective, but metascore-wise, the movies are pretty much equal. The Hobbit movies are minusculely better received. But what makes them worse to me is the fact that they had an opportunity with something that was already good to try to match that, and in which they had already done, New Line Cinema had already done with the Lord of the Rings movies, to try and match that. And not only did they decide, no, let's stretch that out and make it worse, then they decided, and let's release extended cuts.
We, just a few weeks ago, talked about what makes an adaptation good.
Right.
On this show. And we both know that you cannot make, if you're transferring one property to a different medium, you will never be able to do a one-for-one.
Right.
Because that's not how it works.
Of course.
You can write a book much more detailed than you can in a movie, and still, So, The Hobbit, the book, you haven't read it in a long time. It's very episodic. It's basically, that's the spider chapter. That's the King Under the Mountain. Go fight the goblins. And this is the Riddles in the Dark chapter. This is that. It's not a very good, as far as plot goes. J.R.R. Tolkien literally had one person review it before he had it published.
C.S. Lewis?
No.
Really?
His 10-year-old nephew.
Oh.
And the review was, it tells the story of Bilbo, a hobbit, going to wherever, and he gets a ring or something. I don't think he mentions a ring. It is very good and doesn't need illustrations. And then it gets published. He was not writing a traditional plot. There is a plot in there, but if you read, like, Bard being the one that kills Smaug, what? Like, why would you ever do that? And so, for the movies to take, like, Bard just shows up, basically, in the book.
Right. And
kills Smaug. And you're like, oh, okay. And then there's the Battle of Five Armies, which actually has, like, 4 or 6 armies. Like, it's weird. To make a movie out of that, or series of movies, because regardless, it could be good. There's always potential for 1 or 3 or 6 movies to be good.
Right.
You have to change things, or add things, or rearrange things. Lord of the Rings is not a 1-for-1 either. They rearrange a lot of it. Certain plots are actually very different. The whole, like, Aragorn becoming king is kind of different in the story, in the book.
Arwen is not a person in the books in that way.
She is not.
At all, yeah.
So,
they remove great
we have
characters.
to admit that the Hobbit movies have to be different from the book in order to portray, like, to be a good movie, regardless of what the plot is. Regardless of how accurate to the book is.
Right.
Like, to be an enjoyable movie, you have to change it, simply because it's a different medium. And so, and if you've read The Hobbit, you know that it's a pretty bare bones story. Not a lot of detail is given. You don't know who Bard is. So if you were to watch a movie where Bard just shows up, fires an arrow at Smaug and kills him and then disappears, you would be like, what just happened? Why is this a thing? Who is that guy? So, I'm defending a little bit here what they add to the movie. In my opinion, what the problem it's bloated, not fat or whatever. It's got most of the storylines I think are fine. I think Toriel could have been, literally killed. I would have been fine with that.
I think she could have not existed.
She shows up and then just dies. But every scene goes on 5 minutes too long. There could have been a cut that was the same plot lines in the same order, but with just less of each one. Mm-hmm. And I think it would have been great, because you need to know who Bard is. You need to know why he cares for his people, because the Master of Lake Town is a garbage man. You need to know why Thorin cares about going back and fighting Smaug. And so there's a 20-minute prologue talking about why how Smaug destroyed his homeland and carried his people. You need to know why he's mistrustful of people. Mm-hmm. So they show the elves basically abandoning him. You need to know all of these things. You need to know why Bilbo's going to go on this trip. You need to know things. And in a book, you can explain that, even though he doesn't really a whole lot of times. Right. So there's a lot to it. And so, yes, they had the potential. Like, you could have just taken that book and been like, this is what we're making. That would have made a bad movie. It would have made a bad movie. And so they did what they had to. They went
No,
too
they
far.
did not.
No. They went too far.
Okay.
But they did what they had to do by adding more so that you care about what's going on. That right there is the real difference. I care about Bilbo and Thorin and all these people taking back their homeland. I care about Bard. I never for once cared about Anakin Skywalker. Because he says he does things for a reason, but then never does them. Or his reasoning is so flawed. I never care about Obi-Wan because he never really does anything useful. He's always mean.
Through all 3 movies, he's kind of a flat character.
Yeah, and he's a douchebag. Like, they're all yelling at Anakin for showing emotion, but they are yelling at him for showing emotion. Like, Yoda's remorseful over, like, the Clone Wars, but he literally started the Clone Wars. Like, these things, the characters don't make any sense. And because they make so little sense, and because most of the time the movies are given, all the attention is on the cool special effects and a 45-minute lightsaber battle, where the point of that 45-minute lightsaber battle is not that look how fancy this is and look at the cool special effects. The point thematically is these were supposed to be brothers, and now they're fighting, and it's the duel of the fates, because whatever happens will happen. Like there, you could have made the same plot or the same scene 5 minutes long and had much more emotional weight to it. I never cared about anything that was going on, even if you could explain why it was happening. That's fine. I will accept that. But I never cared. I didn't care if Anakin died or lived. I didn't care about Padme. She was always super boring.
Yes, she was.
Like, none of these people ever gave me a reason to care. But regardless of how bloated and how unnecessary a lot of the plot lines are, you care about Bilbo. You care about Thorin and the dwarves getting back their homeland. You care about, like, the tension that Legolas feels between, like, wanting to help others, but also being a son of the king who doesn't want to help others. You care about these things happening. And also because you like Lord of the Rings, you care about what Gandalf is fight. Oh, it's the Necromancer, but it's also Sauron. Oh, I care about that. But I care. I care about what's happening. And that, to me, is why Star Wars is worse than Lord of the Rings. Or The Hobbit.
Yeah. The prequels are worse than Lord of the Rings. And The Hobbit is worse than the original Star Wars trilogy. I mean,
100%.
Yes. We can absolutely agree on those things. Okay, well, we're a little over on time right now. I have a rebuttal, and you would have a rebuttal to that rebuttal.
Yeah, we could go on literally for hours.
Hours, yeah.
But I got work to do.
But we're going to call that an episode, guys. Hey, thank you so much for listening. We want to know what you think.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Tell us how well I did and how much I won this argument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And when you do those 5 words of lies, then go ahead and tell the truth and how I am right. All right. Thank you guys very much. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Remember, save games, save lives.